Okay, I'm going to try to explain essentially why central banking is actually sustainable and why that is not a good thing. It should actually help you even more be opposed to centralized banking. So centralized banking, and specifically using fiat money, the Federal Reserve is an example of such. It prints up money almost at will. And it does this in order to basically make people that it wants to be in power. By it, when I talk about the Federal Reserve, I'm talking literally about some of the most conniving, powerful people ever. Whoever it is that is behind the Federal Reserve. People know who they are. When they print out the money, the primary function is to make them rich, to make them capable of having influence over people. Obviously, if you go up to somebody and you want something done, you pay them, right? But there's no resource backing the money. It's literally just, you're going to do what I say because you're forced to value the paper that we print. Now, people don't know this. People think that it's somehow that there's some explanation of the dollar. In fact, explanations of the dollar came after the Federal Reserve System was passed. I mean, we still do not have a clear definition of what the dollar is. And the truth is, it's just signaturized paper, which is difficult to counterfeit. That counterfeiting, but the printing thereof is the power. It's the money, essentially, in the system. So, through this very clever form of trickery, it's not even that clever when you really think about it. Essentially, they go around and they play. I mean, they just do what they want. I mean, we are a resource, and they do not want money. We're the ones who want money, want/need money, and we do what it takes to get money from them. Now, a lot of people say, well, you can't, it's not a sustainable system. It's not a sustainable system because it constantly just prints money to get things done. It doesn't have a finite source of money. However, the reason that you should be concerned is that it can become unsustainable if they're careless. If they're careless about what they're spending on. But let's say, let's say somebody has a business and is starting to do well, and they're able to start accumulating a bunch of money. But let's say that they have some sort of opposition. Maybe there's somebody that they do not want being in power. So what they do is they essentially do what they go with their infinite money and they say, are you interested in merging your company with ours, or they essentially buy this entity out. Or they invite him to be a part of this money printing club. They say, okay, you have proved that you're one of these elites, and we would like to offer you to join into this corporation. But what this person doesn't know is that this corporation is essentially backed by something that has infinite money. The person at the very top knows that that they can do whatever they want. Now, once that company has been given up, the ability to control the wealth distribution of those people in that company become under the control of pretty much a single person. The whole point of centralization is to consolidate power into a single person. That's the primary reason that communism and socialism simply do not work, because it's susceptible to corruption. The level of centralization allows for corruption. It's noble ideas, however, as soon as you put it in the hands of a human, that leaves open for corruption. Yeah, there might be a good person with that power, however, that person can be compromised. It can, just threats. If you don't understand corruption, I invite you to watch a mafia movie or watch The Godfather. Okay, so and this was all just theoretical to me at first, and then I was working at a country club, and these older gentlemen were at a table, and a younger man stands up, and he's walking by them, and the older gentlemen say to him, "Hey, Mark, or whatever his name is, how are you doing?" and he says, "Oh, I'm retired," and they're like, "You're already retired?" And he's like, "Yeah." He said, "I had a landscaping business taking off, and about 3 months in, I was approached by these what he said, quote unquote, corporate guys, and they decided to buy my company, and then there you go." That's how quick they're able to watch wealth accumulate. And that, in fact, that is the entire point of the stock market. The entire point of the stock market is to figure out where the wealth is going to be, where real wealth is going to be distributed. Because let me tell you, if you wanted to make, revolutionary, to get a message out, to be able to sway public opinion, is not expensive. In fact, it's an extremely volatile situation for them. If any sort of what we call an awakened person, were to get enough money accumulated, they could do something. They could make a movie. They could make a public statement. They can fund people like the Occupy Wall Street people. Such things are not expensive in terms of some of the more the richer people of this country. Okay, now, so what I'm trying to say is that, so they say that the central bank is incapable of sustaining itself. However, the reason that they say this is that it just constantly prints money, so there's just constantly more money in circulation. But this is not true, and this is exactly what a corporation is. Why we're a corporatocracy, why we're a kleptocracy, which means that it's a system run on thievery. Because what happens is, let's say that you're one of these people in the infinite money, in the money printing club, and you want to go and you want to have fun on, say, a resort, and it costs a lot of money, and this resort owner, he's not in on the crowd, right? He could always end up compromising your position later. So you go and you pay for your time at the resort, and it's a lot of money. What you've done is you've just added the amount of money that the American people have. You've added the amount of money that your potential opposition has, and that will go out and it will circulate with everybody. Essentially, everyone simply becomes richer. The fact of the matter is that in order to not accidentally put money into the American people, into your potential opposition, you control. In other words, so that's the incentive for constantly buying out services and basically maintaining a monopoly over services. Now, you see these vast branches of corporations, and they're just barely making the requirements for not being a monopoly over something. I mean, you've got Coke and you've got Pepsi, right? As long as there are two separate entities to the public's mind, then you don't have a monopoly that you would have to worry about people complaining about and the federal government getting involved to bust it up. However, what I'm trying to say is that the central bank essentially tries to eat money, right? It does not want that money floating around in its potential opposition, aka us, the American people. So what it does is it goes around and it empowers people in the club to simply buy out people. Now, the fact of the matter is that when people will actually say to each other, this is how you make money in this world. You start out a really good business and you get it going and you make it look great, and then you get someone to buy you out. Then you go into retirement, right? Well, what you're doing is you're damaging the American people, because now what you've done is you've given away your ability to accumulate wealth from us, and empowered, and just contributed to the power source that is essentially systematically enslaving us. So how's it enslaving us though? How do we not generally have the ability to accumulate wealth on our own? Well, first off, the richest people have access to all the resources. They have all the land. They have all of they have the means, the capital by which to create an entity which is able to accumulate wealth from people. But their goal is to get people get as many people as they can either on welfare or just living just paycheck to paycheck. You know what I mean? They want people, they absolutely, and this is the scary part. Then you see the virtue from their point of view of cancer and of chronic disabilities, because once a person has some sort of disability, they've got something that they've got to hold on to. They've got something that they've got to keep leaking their money out, and that's why nothing is for free. Everything is just at the right point where it's so expensive that it's out of the hands of a few. It's capable of being gotten by other people, and when they get it, they really just put themselves at risk. It also, you know, it just, here's an example. Electronics are enormously expensive. Some SD cards will be like in the $80 range. I don't know, it might have dropped since a couple years ago. And when you look at the SD card, you realize that very little, if any, human labor was involved behind the manufacturing of the SD card. The resources are extremely small. The SD card's like that big, yet you're spending $80 on it. Same thing with cell phones, really the same thing with vehicles. Even though vehicles have a lot more sort of resources involved regardless. Robotics has, especially in case of vehicles, robotics has sort of been capable of taking over all of the labor involved. And so you ask yourself, why? Why is it so expensive? And people say, well, that's just supply and demand, and they want to make the most amount of profit possible. Well, the only way that you would possibly have that sort of argument going for you is if competition is so poor, right? Because if there were tons of people who had car industries, then what you would see is a drastic drop in price, because your competitor is going to go, why are you selling it for 500% its manufacturing cost? I'm going to sell it for 400. Somebody else comes behind them, I'm going to sell it for 300. Then all of a sudden you start getting to the point where transactions become rational. Now, what I'm trying to say is that the central banking system is sustainable. It's not a good thing. The reason it's sustainable is because of corporations, the existence of corporations, which literally just eat the wealth of the American public. And they try to maintain a balance. They say, this many people are stupid. We need to get them to a point where they're, just rich enough and just chronic and problem enough that we don't have to tell them what's going on. They just keep the other people in check who, are just sort of grinding it out in life. They're the ones that are going to work. They're the ones that are doing paycheck to paycheck. Okay, and then, so what was I trying to say? The fact of the matter is they just systematically figure out what it causes to constantly bring people into that manageable level. And then you're in this system where you're like, wow, the wealth distribution is the case that a vast majority of people are poor, and we're on welfare. And another part of this is just a conspiracy. They would love for us to get into a socialism, because so many people at that point. Actually, a socialism is actually more dangerous to them than a central bank, a crony capitalism, a central banking system. And what I mean by that is that if you're in a socialism, you're actually freeing up people's intangible resources, right? Because if you're in a socialism, people have their needs taken care of, what's considered to be needs taken care of, and then you have the option of, hey, do I want to contribute to society or not? And maybe there's some criteria involved, I'm not sure. But regardless, it would free up humanity to take on these, to produce intangible things. Like, for instance, an actor or a model would have resources of which would be completely in their control. And in fact, it is extremely unfortunate that so many of these big celebrities are not awake. In fact, they probably do the best that they can to keep them sort of ignorant of these subjects, simply because they have a certain resource that that they cannot monopolize upon. Okay. Now, so despite the fact that they print money, they're also deleting money. That's the whole point of corporations. And a corporation is simple. You're constantly working under people. It's a huge case of compartmentalization. So you have the vast amount of people that are doing the menial work. They're making the lowest amount of pay. Then you got one guy above him, and he's just making just a little bit more pay than the people underneath them. And he's having to answer to somebody else because he's so afraid of being under that, And so you've got the people on the ground level who just they think like they're going to move up from there, even though it's just mathematically impossible. If everything's a corporation, then necessarily speaking, you're going to exponentially come to a point where opportunity is just limited. Okay, so obviously having a private central bank allows for this to occur. It is I know that there's more to say here, but I just can't think of anything. I hope I got the point across.